Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the podcast of the channel if you're watching. In today's episode I'm going to describe how you can go from 20 to 12% body fat. So if you're someone with too much belly fat, you struggle with man boobs, low confidence, this is the episode for you. I'm going to describe 5 key areas we need to focus on. Number 1 is going to be why you're stuck. Number 2 is the 3 big nutritional principles we need to adhere to. Number 3 is how to train optimally to burn fat and to build muscle. Number 4 is going to be how to manage and optimize your sleep and your stress management. And then finally at the end, possibly the most important thing, mindset, managing your expectations, some KPIs, key performance indicators. Now for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Adrian McDonnell. I'm a full-time online health and fitness coach, formerly a primary school teacher. Today at Mac Lifestyle Fitness, we've helped over 800 clients living across 5 different continents, and we help our clients lose up to 10 kilos in as little as 90 days. Okay, so let's start out with point number 1, 3 reasons as to why you're stuck. So a lot of people are underestimating how many calories they're consuming, and I know it's very, very difficult, especially if you're someone who eats out quite a lot and you're on the go. There's actually an interesting research study done this whereby participants thought they were consuming just 1,200 calories a day, when in reality they were actually consuming 2,100 calories. That's an additional 900 extra calories. If you consume an extra 900 additional calories per day, that's 6,300 calories across the week, which equates to nearly 2 pounds of weight gain over the course of a week. So the first thing I would say here is that even if you're tracking on MyFitnessPal, you need to make sure that you're weighing your food preferably, and if you're making your food yourself. Where the issue essentially can come in is where if you're eating out at restaurants quite a bit or you don't cook your food too often, you might just see something like a chicken breast in the plate along with some vegetables, along with some salad. What you don't see though is like the hidden oils, the butters and the spreads, the oils that are also placed on top of those by the chef when they're cooking. So that's why if you are tracking at a restaurant and you're eating out, I would say whatever MyFitnessPal has on, let's just say it's a 700 calorie meal, I would add at least 200 to 300 on. Okay, so first thing is you're underreporting or you're underestimating. I know as well it can be quite difficult because the way like treadmills, even the way fitness watches work, they will dramatically overestimate how many calories you burn in, let's say, after a run. So the temptation a lot of people have is, okay, I burned 500 calories in this run, so therefore I'm going to eat back my exercise calories. You should not do that. Point number 2 is that you're overfed but you're undernourished. One of the guys who just joined the team or joined our coaching last week, he was simply just overfed and undernourished, as I was saying. So he's essentially consuming too many hyper-palatable, hyper-processed foods. So for example, this can be things like cereal for breakfast, a chicken fillet roll for lunch, soup and a sambo for lunch, and then dinner it could be like things like, I don't know, pasta, bolognese, all these kind of dishes where there's a lot of additional added ingredients. So what we always coach our members on is, first of all, eat more single ingredient whole foods. The reason that's important is because those who consume more, would say, hyper-palatable and hyper-processed foods, research indicates they can consume anywhere up to 500 additional calories per day. So if you're consuming 500 additional calories per day from things like protein bars, from things like breads, from things like pastas, more processed foods, it can be very, very difficult to stay within your calories because these foods tend not to be as filling essentially and will say tie you over in between meals. So make sure you're underfed and you're properly fed, but you're properly nourished through by consuming more single ingredient whole foods. The final reason to why you're stuck in is just you're not moving enough. So interesting enough, the HSE, the Health Service Executive in Ireland, the RDA amount of exercise individuals should aim for per week is just 150 minutes, which is 30 minutes 5 times a week. Now interesting enough, in Ireland's population alone, up to 40% of the population are not even meeting the RDA movement of 30 minutes per day, 5 days a week. So why is lack of movement a problem? Because if you're not moving as much, number 1, you're not going to burn as many calories. It's going to be easier for you to gain weight. But number 2 as well, really important, that lack of movement can result in muscular atrophy. So what is muscular atrophy? This is the opposite of hypertrophy where you gain muscle. It's where you essentially lose muscle. So muscle, you have to work very, very hard to build it, but it's not nearly as hard to maintain it. But it's that still use it or lose it approach. And if you're not exercising, if you're not working out, over time then this will obviously result in weight gain. And as well as that's just like increase your risk of like heart disease, cardiovascular disease and metabolic dysfunction. So just make sure that first of all you are tracking your calories properly. If you're eating out at restaurants quite frequently, make sure that you add on some 100 to 200 at least additional calories from things like oils, butters and spreads. Number 2 is that make sure that you are properly fed and properly nourished, in the sense that you're not consuming too many hyper-palatable foods. Too often people come to us and it's just like having too much cereal before bread, eating a lot of cereal in the morning time, having like chicken fillet rolls and delis out and sausage rolls and all these foods. When you're consuming too many of these foods as a percentage of your calories, it's very, very hard to stay within your calorie deficit. And then number 3 is that make sure that you're getting in at least 150 minutes of movement per week, ideally more, but that is a minimum non-negotiable. Okay, so now that we know as to why you might be stuck, let's speak about the 3 big rocks you need to implement. First of all, starting with your nutrition, the 3 nutrition principles. So what I always say with nutrition is, number 1 in Mac Lifestyle Fitness, we coach your clients on having more single ingredient whole foods. An apple is just an apple, a chicken fillet is just a chicken fillet. But let's just say something like pizza, something like bread, something like pasta, all of these more processed foods, they contain more than 1 ingredient. So what I would say is get at least 80% of your calories from single ingredient whole foods. Why it's important is because, let's just say for example, I was in Starbucks one of the days and I was getting an Americano, and while I was being filled, I was just looking at one of the cakes that they had on offer there. And I believe in one of the cakes, surprisingly enough, for like maybe a 200 gram slice of cake, it had over 800 calories. Over 800 calories, okay? Now, just to give you an example of 800 calories, you could literally have something like 400 grams of chicken fillet. You could probably have 400 grams of potato and up to 800 grams, I would say, of vegetables for the same amount of calories. So if you add that up, 400, 400, 800, that's 1600 grams worth of food versus just 200 grams worth of food and the exact same number of calories. So that's why eating more single ingredient whole foods is so important, because it's going to aid your digestion, aid in satiety, and just keeping you fuller for longer. Then the other 20%, that's when you have a bit more leeway, a bit more flexibility. So for example, one of our clients, Daniel, he lost 15 kilos in 20 weeks, I believe. He had a Chinese every Saturday night. That was more of his fun food out or his meal out at the weekend. Totally fine, but in the context of his full week, okay, 80% of his calories came from whole foods. One for other clients, Tamim, I know he liked to eat out Indian restaurants every now and then. He might like to go for a meal out with his partner. That's fine, because for the rest of the week, the majority of the week, he was controlling his calories. He's eating more single ingredient whole foods. Pillar number 2 in nutrition is what we call, obviously, protein and a plant. So protein intake is particularly important. Why is protein important? Because first of all, protein will help build and preserve muscle mass. So what I want you to do, I get this analogy to one of our clients, is that imagine that your workout, okay, before you do a workout, your body, your muscles, they look like a fillet steak, okay, nice and firm, nice and fresh. After your workout then, when you train hard, you're getting after it in the gym, okay, your fillet steak will go down to like minced meat almost, okay, so it's broken up, you tear down the muscle fibers. What we do next is super important. And if you don't replenish your protein stores by increasing your protein intake particularly, okay, your muscles are not going to be able to recover and you're not going to build and gain lean muscle mass. Okay, so that is why protein is so important, to help you recover from your training, to help keep you fuller for longer. And also, interesting enough, protein is a higher thermic effect of food. I was telling this to one of our clients during the week and he couldn't believe it, that up to 20 to 30% of the calories you consume from protein are actually lost in digestion alone. So for example, you might consume 100 calories worth of a chicken fillet, but after digesting, that might only actually equate to 70 to 80 calories. This because your body burns more calories essentially breaking down protein than any other macronutrient. This is why, when you think about it, often when you have something like a large steak or a large piece of meat, you'd probably sometimes you might sweat after it, or your body temperature will increase. It's because your body has to work harder to digest protein than any other macronutrient, okay? So that's why protein is super important. How many grams of protein should you consume a day? So we recommend our members about 1 gram per pound of body weight, or something like 2 grams per kilo of body weight if you operate in kilos. So for example, an 80 kilo individual, roughly 160 grams a day. At a minimum that we recommend our female clients to get at least 120 grams, and for our male clients at least 150, but ideally 160. So I was having this conversation with one of our clients during the week and he's like, okay, how can I get 160 grams of protein a day? My recommendation, just to keep it as simple as possible, is give me 400 grams of lean meat, and that's going to give you at least 100 grams of protein. So for example, this could be 200 grams of a cooked chicken fillet at lunch and 200 grams of a lean steak mince for dinner, okay? That's your 400 grams there. And then for the makeup of the calories, let's say you need to get another 40 to 60 calories. Very simple. Give me 200 grams of Greek yogurt, give me 1 scoop of protein, mix it on top, and that's going to give you roughly an extra 40 grams of protein. Very simple equation. So 400 grams of lean meat, 200 grams of fat-free Greek yogurt, and 1 scoop of protein per day. All right, so that's pillar number 2, which your nutrition, which is going to be optimize your protein intake. And then pillar number 3, which I actually go back to front. Most people start at calories and then they go on to protein, then they go on to micronutrients. But when you optimize eating more whole foods, when you eat more protein, this is going to help you with number 3, which is king for fat loss, that is staying within your calorie. To calculate how many calories you need to consume to burn body fat, if we want to go from 20 to 12%, what I recommend is whatever your body weight is in pounds, take that number, multiply that number by 10 to 12, and that's going to be your daily caloric target. So for example, if you are 180 pounds, multiply by 10, that's going to be 1800 calories a day. All right, something in that range, multiply by 12, that's going to be what? 2,160 calories a day. So calories in, calories out will essentially govern fat loss, which is why you need to make sure you're consuming the right amount of calories for you and for your individual goals. Now, how do you know whether you're consuming or how many calories you're consuming? That is why I recommend, as I already mentioned in point number 1, that you track your calories using something like an app called MyFitnessPal, okay? There's also another one called Chronometer and Macro Factor. There's a good few out there, but essentially just even keeping a food diary, okay? It gives you accountability. It makes you aware of how many calories are in certain foods. And for me and for our clients, we always say it's like, you don't need to track your calories every single day for the rest of your life. But I always say, see like a college degree, that if you track your calories and you get to a point where just by looking at a plate, you'll be able to eyeball it, you've essentially earned the right that you should be able to go on without tracking your calories meticulously. But I do recommend everyone go through at least a 30-day period whereby you track your calories, okay? And now, other things that are important when it comes to nutrition, they're the big 3. So single ingredient whole foods, protein intake and caloric intake. But also as well, for some reason, the first thing a lot of people do when they want to lose body fat is they completely eliminate or cut out carbohydrates, okay? This is why the ketogenic diet got so popular back in the day, because carbohydrates, for every 1 gram of carbohydrate you consume, it holds onto around 3 grams of water. But what people don't realize is carbohydrates are your body's preferred fuel source, okay? So pillar number 3, which we'll go on in a moment, is training optimally to build muscle and burn fat. But when you train, when you're getting after it in the gym, your body's preferred form of fuel to actually push you through the workout is going to be carbohydrates. And if you completely eliminate that, okay, yes, you might lose weight, but you're also probably not going to optimize your performance in the gym, whether you're going for a run, doing cardio, getting after it in the gym, okay? Your body does need carbohydrates. So what I would say for carbohydrates is, you know, eat a minimum of about 3 grams per kilo of body weight, at least 2 grams per kilo of body weight, and just make sure that you do not completely cut out carbohydrates, because simply being in your workouts may suffer. Now, with all that being said, I'm not anti having fun, okay? You can still lose weight while enjoying some of your favorite foods. So if you are someone you like to eat out, you like to go to restaurants, like we all do, I like to do it at least once a week, I recommend following our GBSS formula we coach our clients on. So essentially, you want to look for foods that are grilled, boiled or steamed in the menu. So for example, a grilled chicken breast, a grilled fillet steak, a grilled fillet salmon, okay? What we want to optimize or try to minimize, should I say, is things like fried, marinated or crispy foods. So fried foods, as the name suggests, they've got lots of added oil in them, okay? Butter chicken as well, like just things like that where there's creamy or butter, because what does that indicate? There's lots of added additional calories there. And what I would say with restaurants is, it's not often the food you directly see, it's the food you can see. And again, it's the hidden oils, it's the hidden butters, which often add up to a lot of extra calories if you're not careful. So grilled protein and boiled carbohydrates. So why are boiled carbohydrates better than something like fried carbohydrates? So for example, a potato is just a potato, but a fried potato contains a potato plus lots of added oils. Just like rice is just rice when you get it boiled or steamed, but if you get fried rice, you're adding on lots of additional calories there. And the dangerous thing here is that you're adding on lots of dietary fat in particular. So protein and carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram, but dietary fat is 9 calories per gram. And like 1 tablespoon of oil alone is around 120 calories. And I can assure you the chef is not just using 1 tablespoon when he's frying your rice or when he's frying your food. So that's why I would highly recommend you try to minimize fried foods. And just in general, like, you know, going to McDonald's, getting your fried cheeseburger, all of these things, like, it's the added oils where a lot of people fall down on, okay? So GBS, so grilled protein, boiled carbohydrates, and then steamed vegetables. So steamed vegetables, again, probably better than fried vegetables, simply because there's a reduction in oils. And the final S is that, so GBSS, so grilled or steamed vegetables, and S is sauce on the side. So for example, if you want your fillet steak and you want some pepper sauce with it, rather than asking the chef to pour it on top, just ask, can I get the sauce on the side? You go for a Caesar salad at lunch, again, rather than get the dressing all over your salad, ask for it on the side and you determine essentially how much you want. The GBSS formula is a really efficient and effective way to essentially eat out at restaurants, have a bit of fun, make this a lifestyle change, make it sustainable and still drop body fat. Okay, so now that we've optimized your nutrition, you can actually lose body fat alone by just optimizing your nutrition. The problem is though, if you just do nutrition only, you don't focus on training, you're just going to turn out to be skinny fat. So imagine that you lose 25 pounds, but you don't lift weights, you don't exercise at all. You just become a smaller and skinnier fat version of yourself, which is why pillar number 3, how to train to build muscle and burn fat, is super, super important. So interesting enough, after the age of 30, okay, you actually lose muscle mass up to 3 to 5% per decade. After the age of 40, you lose muscle mass by up to 10% per decade. After the age of 40, you lose power by up to 18% per decade. So as mistakes to avoid, the use or lose approach, it really applies with your strength training. So with strength training, well, first of all, mistakes to avoid are, a lot of people, they chase the calorie burn when you're in the gym. Going to the gym, the purpose of going to the gym and lifting weights is not to burn calories, it's to build muscle. And see, a mistake a lot of people make is they think that if you're drenched in sweat, shall I say, and you're absolutely killing it in the gym, you're doing burpees, you're doing mountain climbers, you're doing spinning classes, that once you sweat, you're having a great workout. This was a conversation I had to have with one of my clients, Carl, that he just found that he wasn't always sweating or dripping in sweat after the end of the workouts, and he just thought, were they effective or not? But remember, muscle burns up to 3 times more calories than fat does. So the more muscle you have, essentially the more calories you burn at rest. So while you might not burn as many calories, let's say going doing a 60-minute weight session versus doing like 60 minutes cardio, the afterburn of muscle, that's where it really comes in. So literally 2 individuals can be the exact same weight. One individual may have much more muscle mass than the other individual, and he will burn more calories at rest than the other person. So that's why you have to make sure you prioritize getting stronger in the gym, building muscle, and not fall into the trap of thinking that you need to chase the calorie burn. Okay, so how to actually optimize your training. So what I'd recommend first of all is with our clients, we focus on a few key areas of Mac Lifestyle Fitness. Most of our clients, they don't want to be pro bodybuilders. They don't want to, step up on stage. They don't want to be stuck out of breath going up a flight of stairs. So we implement something what we call metabolic resistance training. So we'll say bodybuilders just focus on bodybuilding work, powerlifters focus on lifting heavy, cardio guys, they focus on just running, mobility guys focus on just stretching. We try to incorporate different principles from all these methods so our clients can essentially be strong, be muscular, be fit, and be flexible. Okay, so what I'd recommend is that with your strength training, do about 70% of your lifting at least in that kind of 6 to 12 rep range. The research does indicate that this is the most optimal range for you to build muscle. Okay, so for example, it could be 3 sets of 8, it could be 4 sets of 6, it could be 3 sets of 12 or 3 sets of 10. Okay, do some lifting though. What we like to do with our clients is do some lifting in that 1 to 5 rep range, because there's a difference between building strength and building muscle. And it is nice to build strength so you feel strong, you feel that you're able to shift a nice bit of weight, and again, it would activate different muscle fibers. So your body essentially has got 2 main muscle types. So you've got your type A and your type B. So your type A are your fast twitch fibers, your type B are your slow twitch fibers. And the best way, the most optimal way to optimize your type A, your fast twitch fibers, are to lift heavy or to train fast. That is why if you do things like, deadlifts, we'll say in the 1 to 5 rep range, or like weighted chin-ups, like one of our clients to me, he's doing 27.5 kilo weighted chin-ups for 5 reps, okay? When you're doing some form of heavy lifting, this will activate your fast twitch muscle fibers, okay? And fast twitch muscle fibers have more explosion, they've got more power, and they will help you essentially accelerate more. That's why when you look at Olympic level sprinters, they do a lot of say power work, speed work, etc. And going back to what I said already, you lose power up to 18% per decade after the age of 40. So a good way to train for power is to train fast or to train heavy, okay? Now, with that being said though, the majority of your lifting should be done, ideally if you want to build muscle as well, in that 6 to 12 rep range. And then the final other, would say 10% or so, 15%, this can be something like, in the 12 plus rep range. It can be 15 reps, it can be 20 reps. This can be quite good for building endurance, we'd say. But there are some of the main principles. Other things we like to look out for in Mac Lifestyle Fitness are train each body part at least twice a week. The reason it's important is because the research indicates to build muscle in any body part, you need to train it roughly 10 to 20 sets per week. And if you're doing 10 sets per body part in one single session, it can be very, very hard to, make up that training volume and to optimize it. But if you break that up into, 5 sets and 5 sets, or 6 sets and 6 sets, you're giving your body a chance to train hard, to activate, not annihilate, return maybe 3 days later and do the exact same thing again. All right. Now, other things to look out for when it comes to nutrition is that don't neglect your mobility work. So one of my favorite strength coaches, his name is Joe DeFranco, and his dad George is in his 80s at this stage. So success does leave clues, and the real successful people, they learn from mistakes of others. And one thing he said, which always resonated with me, was he's a meathead. He was a meathead back in his day in the 20s and 30s. So I'm 30 years old at this age. And he was saying one of his biggest regrets was not doing enough mobility and stretching work. Because look, I am aware I'm doing now at least 10 minutes a day that, look, as you age, the joints can become, less limber, more stiff, and your mobility can decline. So again, just like with strength, it's a use or lose approach with mobility. And a mistake I made in the past with mobility is that I only do when I quote unquote get an injury or like I hurt myself. But now I just make sure it's almost like maintaining your car, brushing your teeth every day. You need to do it consistently to keep it ticking over. So I recommend at least 10 minutes mobility, okay? And that'll be another thing you need to look at. Then finally, when it comes to cardio. So cardio is amazing for your cardiovascular fitness. It's great for improving your fitness levels and making sure that, you go on a family hike, you go for a 5K run, you're not completely breathless. So what I generally recommend, seeing as the goal is you want to go from 20 to 12% body fat, and for a lot of people watching this video, you probably want to tone up, add a bit more lean muscle mass, that I'd recommend at least a 2, if not a 3 to 1 strength to cardio ratio. So this could be, for example, that in one given week, you do 3 hours of strength training and 1 hour of cardio, okay? I think that's a pretty fair ratio. Obviously, if you're training for like a half marathon, for an Ironman, for a marathon, for races, you might have to adjust that to like a 1-to-1 split to make sure you're optimizing for that. But if you're optimizing for building muscle, losing a bit of body fat, I do like that 3 to 1 cardio to strength ratio. So there's a few different types of cardio you can do. So for example, you can do HIIT cardio, which is like high intensity interval training. This could be something like 10 second sprinting at max effort followed by a 50-second rest, and you repeat that for 10 to 20 sets, okay? It can also be, you can do some form of metabolic condition. So this could be like, let's say, a finisher in the gym, a 10-minute finisher where you do, let's just say 10 thrusters, which is a squat to a press, 10 med ball slams and 10 kettlebell swings. You repeat that as many sets as possible inside 10 minutes. That's like more metabolic conditioning work. Again, it'd be good to like build your aerobic base. Then other forms of cardio, just steady state. So something like going for a 5K run where your heart rate is roughly at, would say 120 to 140, 150 beats a minute, okay? That's where you're essentially able to run at a conversational pace. That's how you know you're in the aerobic zone. Other forms of cardio too, one of my favorites, just low intensity steady state cardio. So this is something like incline walking on the treadmill, 3% incline for a 30-minute walk at 6 kilometers an hour, okay? You're not really like exerting yourself too much, but it's a good form of calorie burning. But there are some of the preferred forms of cardio that I like to do. Generally, I recommend is that you need to do something that elevates your heart rate and train that aerobic zone. So zone 2 cardio is very, very popular now, but it's essentially where you're running at a conversational pace. You are breaking a sweat, but you're not completely breathless. And if you get about 80% of your cardio in that zone, then for the other 20%, that's where you can do more like high intensity interval work, just to, we'll say, train your max VO2 max, okay? Then finally, then when it comes to movement, it's just steps. So generally we recommend our clients is a minimum of 8,000 steps per day and ideally 10,000, but 8 to 10,000 is usually the sweet spot. The reason this is important is because a study came out in 2023 that there's a reduction of 62% in all-cause mortality, which is death by any cause, when you increase your step count from 2 to 8,000 steps per day. So walking more can literally add years onto your life. All right, so that's why the power of walking, it cannot be underestimated. Now, any other key points here that I mentioned? Now, we spoke about cardio, we spoke about mobility, we spoke about some of the principles. And just finally then, is that with strength training, make sure that you do something that's consistent to you. A lot of people, they ramp it up too quickly, too soon. You go from 0 workouts to 4 workouts, 5 workouts a week, and you burn yourself out after a week or two, okay? It's always best to start with less and build yourself up, especially doing like harder activities like running and so on, because this can often lead to injuries, and the last thing you want is to injure yourself. All right, so they are some of the main principles when it comes to training. Okay, so finally, second last on the list is sleep and stress management. So I would say honestly, sleep is like the silent or the most underrated thing when it comes to fat loss. And not just directly, but also indirectly too. So Matthew Walker wrote a fantastic book. He's on Joe Rogan's podcast. I know I spoke of this before and he wrote a book called Why We Sleep. But his research indicated that lack of sleep, a reduction in sleep, can increase your appetite by upwards of 25% the following day. It actually makes sense when you think about it, because when you're feeling tired, when you're feeling fatigued, what do you look for to give you energy? You look for food, but interestingly enough, the type of food that we tend to consume after a poor night's sleep, it tends to be more hyperpalatable processed foods, okay? So literally an increase in appetite by up to 25% per day. This can be the difference between consuming 2 and 2,500 calories. That can be a gain of 1 pound a week if you do that consistently, and over 4 pounds over the course of a month. Next up is just stress management. So you need to understand that like too much stress can raise your cortisol level. So stress is good. Stress gets a bad rap. Like you do need stress to survive. But there's a difference between eustress and distress, which I spoke about before. So distress is when you're in a chronically stressed out state all the time, whereas eustress is like stress for a period of time. So for example, you do a 60 or 90 minute gym workout. You're in a state of eustress, but then through proper nutrition, proper recovery, okay, you essentially allow your body to heal, to recover, and your stress levels will reduce. But if you're constantly in a state of stress where you're stressed about your workouts are stressful, you're doing HIIT classes, you're doing boot camps, you're doing lots of cardio, and you're stressed in your life, in your personal life, in your family life, in your business or in your work, it's like there's all these different stress buckets, and your body doesn't really know the difference between stress in your personal life, stress in your business, and stress in your workout. So just make sure you manage and optimize your stress. And again, one of the most easiest ways to do this is just get at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So I spoke about this in a past episode, but again, optimizing your sleep, trying to go to bed and waking up at the same time every single day, minimizing, we'll say the 10-3-2-1 rule. So 10 hours before bed, cut caffeine, cut alcohol. 2-3 hours before bed, try to stop eating and drinking, and 1 hour before bed, minimize electronics and minimize working. And that's a good formula that generally works well for a client when it comes to managing and optimizing your sleep and your stress. And then finally, point number 5, probably the most important one, is just mindset, managing your expectations, and some KPIs, some targets to aim for. So a lot of people, when it comes to losing body fat, when it comes to going from 20 to 12% body fat, the effort of doing the training, following the nutrition principle that we spoke about, isn't nearly as hard as just the effort of staying consistent. And the biggest reason most people fail in fitness is because they lack the consistency. They can do it for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, but then usually something happens. You go out, you get a takeaway at the weekend, your mindset is, I've already eaten a bad food, I may as well keep going. You miss Monday's workout and just this vicious yo-yo cycle repeats. So what I would say there is, first of all, manage your expectations. There is no finish line in fitness, okay? Your goal should be to get to 12% body fat, but don't become disheartened if it's totally normal that you do everything right for a week and the scale is not dropped at all. Maybe the scale might increase, okay? And you're like, what the hell? You know, I'm following the nutrition, I'm doing the training, I'm doing the diet. Honestly, just stay consistent. I promise you. I've never met anyone who did not quit, not get to where they want to be. But the reason is most people just quit too soon because they've unrealistic expectations. So what are actually some realistic expectations as a health and fitness coach? Aim to reduce your body weight by roughly 2 to 4% per month. Okay, so for example, if you are 100 kilos, that means 2 kilos to 4 kilo drop per month. For a lot of people though, it's probably going to be somewhere like 1 pound to 0.5 kilos a week, but generally 2 to 4% per month of your body weight, that is a good target to aim for. Now what I would say here is that the first 10 pounds you lose are usually a bit faster. So for a lot of our members starting out, they might see a quick win on the scale where they drop quite a bit of weight in the first 3 or 4 weeks by optimizing nutrition, increasing their activity and just staying consistent. However, naturally enough, as your body fat percentage decreases, your body is less fat stores to pull from. So like going from 20 to 15% is not going to be as quick as going from 15 to 12, because the leaner you get, okay, the less body fat you have, the longer it's going to take. And that's why honestly, for me, it's like I love staying photo shoot lean year round. I like staying 10 to 12% body fat year round. If I want to go to single digit body fats like I did when I competed in men's physique bodybuilding in 2023, like, I would honestly say it's probably an extra 50% effort for an extra 2 to 3% reduction in body fat. So in my opinion, that's not worth the trade-off. And again, speaking of trade-offs, you need to manage your expectations. What do you want to do? What are you willing to do? What won't you do? Okay, you want to get to 12% body fat, but then if you're not willing to work out 3 or 4 times a week, if you're not willing to cut out alcohol every single week and maybe limit it to once a month rather than once a week, if you're not willing to cut out the 4 takeaways a week, it's okay. Well then, like, you're probably not going to get to 12% body fat at least quickly, and it's going to take you much more time. So what do you want to do? What are you willing to do? What won't you do? And I think just actually managing, okay, what you're not willing to do or what you're not willing to sacrifice is a good place to start. One of our clients, Tamim, he likes to obviously eat out with his wife, you know, maybe once a week. One of our clients, Daniel, I spoke about, he likes to go out once a week with his family. With some of our other members, it's like, if you want the home cooking, if you want mama's cooking, or if you like, you know, go on a holiday every now and then, you don't want to feel too restricted, that's fine, okay? At least you know that, look, you just need to give yourself a bit more runway. The problem is where you think that you can still socialize every single weekend, you can still drink beer every weekend, you can still get a takeaway 2 or 3 times a week, and still get to 12% body fat. That's where the unrealistic expectations come in, okay? So what do you want to do? What are you willing to do? What won't you do? This is why when it comes to KPIs and tracking, it's super important you track 4 key things. First one is we recommend our clients track their body weight every single morning, simply because your body weight can fluctuate daily depending on your carbohydrate intake, your stress levels, your water intake. I'll use myself as my own best example. Yesterday I weighed in at 84.5 kilos. This morning I weighed in at 83.1 kilos. Okay, now had I weighed myself on just one day of the week, both of those have a 1.4 kilo fluctuation. Okay, that is huge. Okay, but I know that I'm just going to calculate my weekly average, and once I know that I'm in a cut at the moment, that my weight is going in the right direction. Never get too high when the weight goes down, never get too low when your weight goes up. Okay, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle, and that's why we like to track your daily weigh-in, so you have more of an accurate reflection. Number 2 thing to track is going to be your nutrition. Again, if you're not assessing, you're just guessing. Number 3 is that you track your workouts. Okay, so again, with strength training, one of the most important principles is progressive overload. And you need to make sure that, okay, last week you were lifting this weight. If you're not aware of your numbers, then you might not be actually pushing yourself to your limit or to your capability. And the 4th thing to track is take your progress pictures. Honestly, one of my biggest regrets in my transformation journey is I would love to look back at skinny fat Adrian circa 2013. 2014, I'd love to have some gym footage of me training in the gym, exercising. You cannot, like, I would honestly, I'd give everything to be able to see some footage there, because often when you're on this journey, especially with pictures, it's like you look at yourself every morning when you wake up. You look at yourself every day after the shower, okay? You see yourself more than anybody else does. And sometimes when you're just looking at yourself day by day, you don't see the progress. But then if you compare your week 1 photos to your week 4, for example, God, you know, I'm actually seeing, you know, more shape and tone in my arms. I'm seeing a reduction in body fat, okay? That's because we often underestimate how much effort it takes to see results and like how quickly we can get results in, you know, 1 or 2 weeks, but overestimate what can be accomplished in, let's say, 1 year. So the more progress pictures you take, honestly, one of our clients who came to us, they said one of the biggest regrets was not taking more progress photos. That's what he did. He started taking more progress photos and documented his journey. So above all else, I would say document your journey, take your pictures, track your foods, track your weight, and log your workouts, all right? And that is essentially, if you do those things consistently, you can go from 20 to 12% body fat. In terms of time frame, like, look, how long is a piece of string? But I would say that if you were consistent, first of all, above all else, so 80-20 nutrition, optimize your protein intake, optimize your calories. You're working out ideally 4 times a week, okay, 4 times a week strength training, maybe 1 or 2 hours cardio, 8,000 steps. And if you're consistent doing those things, I would estimate that inside roughly 90 days to 12 to 16 weeks, if you're at 20%, you can certainly get to 12%. And that's why sometimes it's like, people always speak about balance, which annoys me. It's like, God forbid, okay, you want balance in your life. Balance should be looked at over the macro period, over the course of a year, not over the course of a few weeks or a few months. And sometimes I like in fitness actually going all in and being out of balance, okay, whereby you're actually being a bit stricter for maybe 90 days. And I know for a lot of people, if you go all in for 90 days, okay, and you get to go from 20 to 12% body fat, once you get there, then the effort of getting there and staying there, it's completely different. It's way, way easier, okay? So sometimes what I recommend is be out of balance in the good way from your fitness and in the lesser way from your social life. Be willing to sacrifice, you know, alcohol once a week to maybe once a month, or maybe cut it out for 90 days completely. Set yourself a challenge, okay? Because a lot of people, they just dip their toes with their fitness. They half-ass it essentially. And then they just say they blame their metabolism, they blame their hormones, they blame their situation. They've all these limiting stories when in reality, it's you that's the problem. It's your mindset, it's your approach, your expectations, okay? So you can definitely get there in 90 days. You can also get there in 180 days. The question is, again, what do you want to do? What are you willing to do? What won't you do? Once you manage your expectations, just then set some realistic timeframes, realistic expectations, and you will sooner or later get there once you do not quit. And if you need help with not quitting, okay, you need help with consistency, putting all of this into a plan. That's what one of our guys, Brian, who joined us last week, said, look, I just love having a structure now. I was winging it, I was DIYing it myself. I like being told what exercise I need to do, how many times a week, how many calories I need to eat, what foods I need to eat, and having something to check in with. So if you need a bit of accountability, support, and guidance, one-on-one coach is what we offer at Mac Lifestyle Fitness. Click the link in my bio to schedule a call with me or a member of my team, where we can essentially go through what your goals are, what your challenges are, what you've tried in the past, and essentially what you need to help with. And based on those things, we can see if our coaching is a fit for you. All right. But that is all for this week's podcast episode. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out our weekly uploads. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm just starting my channel. Please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my weekly videos, but ideally I'm doing more than one video a week. And then finally, if you want more daily fitness tips and content, I have an Instagram profile, Adrian_MacLifestyleFitness, and that is where I post at least one time a day. All right. But that is all for this week's episode. Thanks very much for listening or for watching, and we'll catch you guys soon.